The following video is on the Sonic the Hedgehog series of video games, so as with all other video game related brief histories, I will be focusing on the main home console releases of the Sonic franchise. Also, I understand that critic reviews are not always the best judge of a game's quality, but I will be referencing them a fair amount for the sake of convenience. The statements and commentaries made in the following video do not necessarily reflect my opinion on the Sonic franchise. Thank you, and good day. Hello and welcome to another episode of A Brief History. Today's episode, Sonic the Hedgehog. Ready, set, go! June 23rd, 1991. In an attempt to compete with the gaming juggernaut that was Nintendo's Super Mario Bros. Series, video game publishing company Sega released their own bright and colorful platformer for their 1988 16-bit console, the Sega Genesis. This game was known as Sonic the Hedgehog. Sonic! Created by Yuji Naka, produced by Shinobu Toyoda, and developed by Sonic Team, Sonic the Hedgehog took the gameplay of the Super Mario series and switched the emphasis from platforming to speedrunning. In fact, Yuji Naka has stated that the trademark speed of the Sonic franchise was inspired by having to play level 1-1 of Super Mario Bros. Over and over again due to the game's lack of a save function. The story of Sonic followed a buck-naked hedgehog running around in nothing but a pair of red shoes, trying to save a bunch of innocent baby animals from being turned into robots by the evil Dr. Robotnik. Yeah, story wasn't very important back then. Sonic the Hedgehog was a massive success, adding large amounts of fuel to the fire that was the 16-bit console war between Sega and Nintendo. The immense popularity of Sonic the Hedgehog elicited multiple sequels, many of which were not that different from the first game, save for a few graphical and gameplay-based upgrades. Sonic's first sequel came out for the Sega Genesis on November 24th, 1992, and was simply titled Sonic the Hedgehog 2. This game introduced multiple new gameplay mechanics which are now staples of the Sonic series, such as Sonic's two-tailed flying fox sidekick Miles Tails Prower, as well as Sonic's now signature move, the Spin Dash. Now, surprisingly, the third installment of the Sonic series was not actually Sonic the Hedgehog 3, but rather Sonic CD for the Sega Genesis add-on known as the Sega CD. Sonic CD introduced the Sonic universe to the characters Amy Rose and Metal Sonic and boasted the incredible musical masterpiece that is Sonic Boom. But perhaps the most interesting of the original 2D Sonic games were Sonic the Hedgehog 3 and Sonic & Knuckles. Sonic 3 once again brought a myriad of new features to the Sonic franchise, such as the character Knuckles the Echidna, a save feature, and the ability to switch between Sonic and Tails in the single-player campaign. And Sonic & Knuckles acted as both a standalone game in which one could either play as Sonic or Knuckles, and as an expansion pack for Sonic 2 and 3, allowing Genesis owners to play through those games as Knuckles. Oddly enough, this was not how Sega originally intended these two games to be released. Originally, Sonic 3 and its Knuckles-centric expansion card were all intended to be part of one big Sonic 3, but were forced into separation due to wibbly-wobbly space and timey-wimey constraints. With Sonic now on top of the world, even to the point of rivaling the man himself, Super Mario, Sega felt it was time to take Sonic to the next level, or more accurately, to the next dimension. For November of 1996, Sega released the game Sonic 3D Blast for both the Sega Genesis and their newest console, the 32-bit Sega Saturn. 3D Blast used three-dimensional character sprites on a series of isometric 2.5D levels and was one of the first main Sonic games to be met with high amounts of negative feedback from critics and fans alike. This was due to the game's repetitive, boring, and most importantly slower-paced gameplay, as well as its sloppy controls and strong departure from the series norm. But in order for anything to stay relevant, it has to change with the times. So with the game industry making the jump into fully 3D game design, Sega was determined to bring Sonic along for the ride. And it was at this time on September 9th, 1999 that Sega released their last home console, the Dreamcast, and the main launch title for this console was Sonic Adventure, the first fully 3D Sonic game and the soon-to-be best-selling game on the Dreamcast. In addition to improvements in control and graphical prowess, Sonic Adventure also introduced multiple interesting new gameplay mechanics with 6 playable characters, these being Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Amy, as well as 2 new characters, E102 Gamma and Big the Cat! Sonic Adventure saw the return of critical acclaim to the series after the mixed reviews of 3D Blast, and its massive success warranted a 2001 sequel and multiple cross-platform ports of both games. So at this point, Sonic had 7 critically acclaimed games and one kind of meh game under his belt, but with Sega having abandoned the home console game in favor of third-party development, no one really knew what was next for their favorite spiky blue mammal. And thus began an odd period of time between 2004 and 2010 in which virtually every Sonic game released was met with mixed reviews. Throughout this time, Sonic Team experimented with the Sonic format through the introduction of everything from 3-person team gameplay mechanics to guns to werewolves to human-hedgehog romantic relationships. Yeah, I think Sonic Team was going through a bit of an awkward teenage period. Not to say that any of these games were bad, but look at that! This is weird! How did no one at Sonic Team understand just how weird that is? It's weird! So for just under a decade, almost every single Sonic game release was greeted with mixed to negative critical response, and this response was, for the most part, shared by the fans as well. Fans and critics alike were becoming fed up with Sega's stubborn desire to pull Sonic away from its speedrunning platforming roots in favor of brawling, sword fighting, gunplay, and bestiality. Sonic the Hedgehog 4, an episodic attempt at bringing the series back to its roots, was a step in the right direction, ditching the story crutch and superfluous gameplay variants, but it was just not quite there yet. And it was at this time in 2010 that Sega released yet another new Sonic game exclusively for the Nintendo Wii, Sonic Colors. Colors went back to what Sonic fans wanted, fast-paced gameplay that struck a good balance between 2D and 3D, and a story that was as simple as stop Robotnik from doing the bad things. Colors also introduced new power-ups to the series called Wisps. These power-ups kept the gameplay fresh without straying too far away from the series series norm. All things considered, Sonic Colors was a third-party Sonic game done right that both old and new fans could enjoy. And overall, things seem to be finally getting back on track for Sonic Team, for the story remained more or less the same for their next title, Sonic Generations, which celebrated Sonic's 20th anniversary. In May of 2013, Sega announced that they would be partnering with Nintendo for their next 3 Sonic games. The first of these games being 2013's Sonic Lost World for the Wii U and 3DS, which attempted to take the Sonic universe in a more creative direction. But unfortunately, Sonic purists were once again turned off by the game's slower pace and obvious attempts at copying Super Mario Galaxy, landing the game mixed reviews and putting Sonic Team back on probation by fans. In addition to video games, Sonic the Hedgehog has also appeared in multiple television shows, a full-length film, and a series of comic books which have been running since, get this, 1992. In fact, the Sonic comics have been acknowledged by Guinness World Records as the longest ongoing comic book series based off a video game series. In 2013, it was announced that a new Sonic the Hedgehog TV series was being produced by Sega and Sonic Team in collaboration with WeDo Entertainment. The show will be called Sonic Boom and is scheduled to run on Cartoon Network starting in the fall of 2014. It was also announced that Nintendo and Sega will be developing a set of Sonic Boom video games for the Wii U and 3DS. Sonic the Hedgehog is one of the most recognizable video game mascots of all time, but unfortunately he is now also one of the most criticized. So the future remains very uncertain for the franchise. Sonic Team's been kind of all over the place for the past decade, but video games are a subjective medium and you can never fully satisfy everyone. And when you see these Sonic games being panned by critics and fans alike, it's usually due to the fact that they're different. But change is not something that we should be shaming, it's something that we should be promoting and supporting, not just in video games, but in all of life. Otherwise, the things that we love will fade into obscurity. And having been a Sonic the Hedgehog fan for as long as I can remember, that is just something I don't want to see happen. I'll see you in a week, guys. DFTBA. I wonder if that picked up on the mic.